Hello, everyone. I'm Jen Consalvo. I'm the co-CEO of Established. And this event is specifically to discuss the NASA SBIR Ignite. Let me just tell you a little bit first. Established, we're an organization that helps other organizations with their innovation, their startup, and their communication strategies and programs. We've been doing this for over a decade and love this work. We're very excited right now about all the opportunities that SBIR Ignite offers. This is a new program, which most of you are probably familiar with now. We've been communicating, whether it's been myself, Anne, Lori Moncrief, other members of the extended team. Hopefully, many of you, you've heard from us, you've been checking this opportunity out and are excited about some of the new opportunities and new ways that this program sort of opens up the opportunity for new companies. Let's see. So many of you, like I said, have talked with Anne or Lori. Anne is here in the chat. Some of you may have heard about this event from community ambassadors, SBDCs, some of the ESOs, the entrepreneur support organizations, accelerators that we work with. However you learned about the Ignite program or this event, we welcome you here. And really the point of this conversation tonight is not to sort of go through everything about the solicitation, but to really dive a little bit deeper and understand, are there any specific blockers? Are there things that you need to better understand before you can submit your proposal, or any other general questions? We can't answer things that are very, very specific to your technology. So if you ask, well, you know, my technology does this, this, and this, am I a good fit? We can't answer those questions tonight. But if there are other things that are a little bit more general about how to prepare your application, about a little bit more about the categories and the topics, please put your questions into the Q&A, and Anne will queue those up, and Max can answer those questions for you. You may have noticed we're recording the conversation. We will share what we can afterwards, whether it's in a transcript or a video. We'll see what we can share with you. And let's see, anything else I want to share? I think that's it. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Max Briggs. He is the NASA SBIR Entrepreneurial Engagement Lead. He's leading up this entirely new program, again, the NASA SBIR Ignite program. So Max, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jen. So the first thing I'll do is just go into a little bit of the general differentiation. Why do you have a different mechanism? Why Ignite and then not just doing something through the regular SBIR solicitation? And so the answer to that is kind of like there's a big kind of strategic answer to that, and it's essentially that NASA's mission, used to require us to ask for extraordinarily specific technologies to satisfy an extraordinarily specific niche NASA mission goal and need. But as commercial space is expanding and becoming a more viable place for people to do commerce, and there's more and more there's more and more commercial activity in space. There's more and more capability in space. There's more and more innovation in space that's relevant specifically to the private sector. And so much in the same way that the old NACA centers had to transition from the carriers of R&D in aeronautics to just one of many players in aeronautics as commercial air travel became a bigger and bigger thing, NASA also, our mission in space is not only going to be about landing astronauts on the moon or landing astronauts on Mars or launching the James Webb Space Telescope. It's also going to be about cultivating innovation and maintaining US leadership in emerging commercial aerospace markets. And so the Ignite solicitation is meant to say, essentially differentiate and say, okay, so we have a traditional solicitation, and that solicitation reads like a requirements document, quite frankly, where we ask for very specific things. And the goal of that solicitation, for the most part, is infusion of technology into a NASA mission. But NASA also has responsibility for stimulating commercial markets. And in those areas where a NASA need overlaps with a commercial need, or that we are actually responsible for stimulating that market, we want to have a mechanism to fund early stage innovators that are making that happen. And so, so we get this set of topics that essentially it does not require NASA to be the only user of it. And so we don't want to tell people, stop what you're doing. Instead of making widget A, make widget B, which only I can use. We want you to continue to take your innovation and bring it to market, and your success in that market will have benefits for NASA. And that is the primary differentiator. We want you to maintain your go-to-market strategy. The part of the thing we want out of Ignite is we want you to convince us that you will not be dependent on the federal government forever for your funding. Your revenue stream, you may need SBIR funding now or want SBIR funding right now for a non-dilutive source of capital. That's fine. That's great. That's why we're here. We're happy to help. But the idea is that at some point you're selling products, and you need to convince us, when we say demonstrate an understanding of the market and to provide a strong commercialization plan, what we're really trying to get you to prove is that you're not going to be dependent on perpetual SBIR funding or perpetual federal government funding in order to maintain your viability as a company. We want to see that you have a plan, and a realistic plan, to bring that product to market, sustain your company on those sales, and quite frankly, to have to not have NASA be the sole funder of the tech development effort. If that product is going to market, then you should have other investors or other whether you're bootstrapping and you're gonna develop the tech based on sales, or whether you got investors who are gonna accelerate your go-to-market plan. Either of those is fine, but we want to see that you have a revenue stream that's plausible, that isn't 100% dependent on perpetual government funding. So real quickly, I will run down the topics a little bit. As you guys, I think, are probably aware, we did identify some topics that we thought had overlap between commercial viability and NASA NASA importance or NASA need, and so or relevance in some cases. So one is technologies using NASA data for climate resilience. That's an interesting one, because the thing that makes it relevant to NASA is not that NASA is the user. NASA in that case is not likely to be a customer of the climate resilience technology that's being offered, but NASA has a responsibility to make sure that NASA data is as impactful as it possibly can be. And so if you guys have software packages or products that could inform whatever it is, maybe it's insurance, maybe it's urban planning, maybe it's architecture. We don't know what it is, but if you think that NASA data can be better used in a profitable marketplace, that we want to know about it, right? And we're not being prescriptive about what it is, and we're not saying that we need to be the customers of it. We are just saying that it needs to use our data to effectively in order to impact more people here on Earth. Enabling technologies for the development of a robust low Earth orbit economy. That is potentially a very broad topic. There's a lot of stuff in there. The idea between the LEO commercialization is a program at NASA, and it's responsible for making sure that there's commerce that can be done in destinations in low Earth orbit. And in order to do that effectively, lots of things need to happen. You need to be able to launch cheaply, effectively, affordably, reliably. You need to be able to get products that you've made on low Earth orbit down. You need to be able to have robust infrastructure. You need to be able to have communications. You need to have a lot of different things that need to be solved. And in that case, if you have a technology that could potentially, let's say, benefit a company like Axiom, who's making a LEO destination, even if NASA doesn't actually buy the technology from you, NASA might be buying time in an Axiom module at some point. And so you're a contributor in some way to something that is relevant to NASA. And even in that case, even if it's not, even if we don't become a customer of it, just the fact that there's a thriving LEO economy and that US small business is an active participant in the innovation space is itself part of the mission of LEO commercialization and would be considered a win. A low-cost photovoltaic arrays for space. That's essentially a topic that's dedicated to bringing some of the economies of scale and the affordability that you've seen come in terrestrial solar markets here on Earth. That kind of economy of scale and that cost reduction has not taken place for space-rated solar arrays. And as we start to put more and more things into low Earth orbit, we're going to need more and more solar arrays. And quite frankly, those solar arrays are a large percentage of the cost of a lot of the assets that require power in space. And so the more you can bring those down, the more you can bring down the cost of satellites, which opens up, which closes more business models. And so it's a way to increase the viability of various business models. And that, again, there's no specific technology that's called out, right? I mean, we've had similar topics that have been tackled in iTech, and people did it all the way from improving wafer yield to offering innovative types of solar arrays, to increasing the reliability of terrestrial solar arrays in space. There's massive numbers of possibilities of things that could be that could reduce the cost. And unlike the traditional SBIR solicitation, the solution mechanism is up to the innovator. We're not saying we want a specific thing. We're saying, give me something that reduces that cost. Point of use recycling for space age logistics. That's basically, we get really far away from the Earth and we can't afford to bring every single thing that we need with us. So we need to be able to reuse things. And there's a lot of circular economy kind of things going on here on Earth. And we have, there's no bigger need for circular economy than there is when you're on the moon, or when you're on Gateway, or when you're on Mars. I mean, you really have to use everything that you bring to the maximum possible extent. So there's a lot of terrestrial work being done trying to figure out those problems. Can companies turn those solutions into things that have low swap that we can use for, low size, weight, and power that can be used on a gateway, or on the moon, or on Mars potentially. And the last one is commercial development of active debris remediation. So active debris remediation and NASA's role in that is kind of new, and it's interesting. The solutions, it's not just about grabbing stuff out of space and deorbiting it, although that is in scope. But how do you track it? How do you govern the maneuvers that are going to be required? How can you intervene? How can you, again, it's basically just asking the question: if we're gonna put thousands and thousands of things per year into space, how can we make that safe and handle that situation responsibly in a way that's going to allow access and affordable access for years to come, even as volume increases? So again, there's a lot of problems that need to be solved for that. So it's not, I encourage people to not narrow the scope too much when thinking about what could possibly be useful for ADR. And finally, so those are the topics. So those are the 6 that we chose for the first round. But it's not just about selecting different topics. It's also about changing the way we evaluate proposals and what we ask for out of proposals. So I think that you guys are probably familiar with the fact that we don't require the 20-page proposal that the traditional solicitation does. 7-page proposal, 15-page deck. Our hope is that most companies that are commercialization focused have a 15-page deck essentially ready to go, and we're trying to ask for many of the same things that you would put into a traditional deck. So we hope it's not a huge heavy lift to create a commercially focused deck that is going to be communicating those kinds of your path to market, and then a 7-page paper that's specific to the topic that lets us know technically what are your differentiators, why should we choose you, how do you advance the state of the art, all the same stuff, but doing it in 7 pages in a concise way. We also we score those proposals with a heavy emphasis on commercialization. So whereas in prior scoring in traditional SBIR, if you had a great go-to-market plan and a mediocre technology or an incremental improvement on the state of the art, that proposal may not score well compared to something that has a very niche need, no potential in the market, but it does advance the state of the art in a very niche application. because that's the way the proposals are scored. So in this case, if the opposite is true, if you have something that it has to be innovative, it has to advance the state of the art, it has to be an innovative solution. But even if it's an incremental improvement over the state of the art, if you have a way to impact a market that is, and you can convince us that you have that it is viable and that you are going to be able to be a profitable company that's going to deliver capability to that market and improve lives here on Earth, then that is a completely viable solution, right? It's the weighting is changed. So that is the kind of high level differentiation between traditional solicitation and Ignite. And we try to be less prescriptive in the ask intentionally to try to allow we try to ask for what a solution to the problem, we try to ask for the problem to be solved, but not specify the method of solution. So I hope that allows a little more breadth of opportunity. And with that, I think I'm done talking about the, there was a question, I'm sorry, that I saw here. Oh, there were two specific questions that I was kind of asked ahead of time that I did want to address. There was one that says, how many years of audits are required for SBIR validation? That's a good question. It's because there's a form. There are many of the forms. Trust me, I tried to scrub everything I could out of the form and document requirements, but a lot of those are SBA requirements, and there's not. We have to collect the data that SBA requires us to have. The audit form. If you have never been audited, then you just have to fill out that form and say, I've never been audited. That's the end of the story. If you have been audited, you need to tell us what the result of that audit was. But don't let that audit form scare you. Like, oh, I haven't been audited, therefore I'm not a valid company for SBIRs. That's not true. You have to get registered in SAM, and there's hopefully some of the folks have talked to you about how to do that. So if you haven't done that yet, you should get those registrations going because there's a long lead time. But you're allowed to have that process going on up until the point of selection. So you still have time to start the process. I would start at ASAP, but in terms of the actual, those registrations are requirements to receive an award, but there is no audit requirement. We are required to ask you if you've been audited. And if the answer is no, that form is just filled out, easy peasy. And then the final question is on admission and acceptance rates. This is the first year of the program, so unfortunately I have no data. I cannot tell you historically X number of % of people are awarded in the SBIR Ignite solicitation. I can say that in traditional SBIR, we get somewhere between like 1,500 and 1,800 applications, and I think we make roughly 300-ish awards. But that's all just budget. We don't say we're designing it to have this acceptance rate. We have a budget and we can only afford to award so many phase ones. And so whatever it's just whatever we can afford in phase one divided by the number of applications we receive is your acceptance rate. And so typically that ranges between like 15 and 20% in the traditional SBIR solicitation. But the truth of the matter is I do not know what it's going to be for Ignite. We have a lower barrier to entry with the easier proposal submission process, but we also have a harder niche to be in. So it's not clear exactly where the applications are going to come in. So I'm sorry, that might be a not super satisfying answer, but it's the best I can give you at this time.
All right, so we've actually have a lot of questions pouring in. So the first one, and we might jump around here as we try to group things, but what TRL is preferred at time of application? So Max, you want to talk a little bit about TRL and this specific program?
If anyone who's not familiar, I assume you guys are all probably deep tech folks and probably know what TRL is, but technology readiness level. So which basically goes from 0, meaning I thought about it, it came to me in a dream last night, to 9, which means we've used it in its application 100 times. The thing never fails. It's super reliable. And so there is no specific TRL requirement for Ignite. I will say that. I will say the SBIR program, everything that's in an SBIR program has to be innovative, meaning that it has to be, it has to advance the state of the art in some way. And so if you're already TRL 9, then you are state of the art. So I guess in some sense, you probably can't be TRL 9. And if you're TRL 0, the chances are that you're going to be pretty far away from being able to get that product to market. So you might not have a ton of investor interest that's going to make a strong commercialization case. But those are not concrete statements. There are no requirements. But the idea here is that you can give us a pretty convincing argument that that your path to commercialization, including the time it's going to take you to get from where you are now to product, is going to be compatible with the type of funding that you're going to require after you're done with your SBIR. So as long as your TRL level and your expectations for your investors or your path to market, if it doesn't include investors, as long as those are matched and you make a convincing case for that, in theory, you could be anywhere in there. If you're looking for something slightly more concrete, I would say most SBIRs come in somewhere between 3 and 6. They leave somewhere between 4 and 7-ish.
All right. And just a reminder to everyone, if you're submitting questions
Jen,
about
I think you're muted. Sorry, what was that?
Can you hear me?
I can now. I missed the first part of that sentence. It might have been my connection.
Okay. Just a reminder for anyone who's submitting questions that are specific to your technology, I'm not going to read those aloud. You know, feel free, we can email, but we can't advise you on your specific technology right now and whether it's a match for this solicitation. So we're going to stick with other
I'll
questions.
expand on that a little bit. The question that everybody wants to know and everybody should know is, am I going to win if I apply, right? And I'm just not allowed to answer that, right? So I apologize in advance.
And hopefully when Max was running through more about the topics, hopefully that helped you think about, could my technology somehow be applicable to those topics? So just go back and think about that. And I'm going to dive into some more specific questions. So the next couple questions, Max, are specifically about the application itself and some of the forms. So this may be very detailed, but I'm guessing that a lot of people may bump into the same problems. So we're going to ask these questions. Let's see, the firm information form that they're directed to is a PDF, but people are unable to add their UEI or their EIN because the formats don't fit. So
that was a problem until today. So if you try to do that problem was raised to our attention. It was a fillable PDF form that required a numeric only, and it was an alphanumeric code that needed to be entered. That form has been updated, so if you re-download it, it accepts an alphanumeric. Having said that, if you've already submitted and it wasn't there, we would be pinging you and saying, hey, we need it. But it wouldn't, if you've already submitted your application and that field had to be left blank in that moment, we would come after you for the information, but it wouldn't knock you out of consideration. But anyone who downloads the form from now on, that will not be a problem. Thank you.
Okay. And hopefully this is kind of a similar question. So the zip code on the proposal cover letter turns zip codes +4 into an integer separated by commas and with leading zeros removed. So it's knocking the zeros out of the numbers. Is there a workaround, or should they just submit it and again worry about it later?
If you could flag that for me, we can have somebody update the form and make sure that doesn't happen. If that's causing you problems, don't say I'm not going to submit. That's a silly reason to not attempt to get $1 million from the US government.
And let me remind everyone, unlike if you've ever gone through this application process before for other agencies, there's sometimes you go through a system and it blocks you, right? Because of certain things that aren't there or don't look correct. your application is actually going through, you're uploading it into Box, right, Max? So there isn't any kind of automatic flag that's going to just knock you out of contention for something like that. So again, if you see these problems, definitely flag them. We're going to share them with the team, but don't let it stop you.
Yeah.
Okay. So
we'll say this is a pilot effort, and I actually would probably prefer people to be informed of these issues as they come up, rather than us needing to go back after the fact. But until we get established, it's going to be it's going to be uploading the PDFs, fillable PDFs to Box.
Okay. And we're getting some questions about budgets, and I understand why, especially for anyone who's never gone through this process before. So do you need to submit budget forms for areas that are not applicable? For example, if I will not be using subcontractors, and for direct labor costs, should I use actual salaries and benefits, averaged over employee class, or are there standard government salaries and benefits I should use as references? How can they get a little bit more detail about how to fill out those budgets?
So anything that's not applicable, you do not have to fill out. So when you go to section 8 of the solicitation on the SBIR solicitations page, it has a hierarchy of forms, and next to most of the forms, it flags if applicable. So for example, in phase 1, essentially nobody travels because the phase 1 budget isn't high enough to justify a large percentage being for like a kickoff meeting. So usually there's no travel form required. So you do not have to submit a travel form. So if you're not going to use subcontractors, do not submit a subcontractor form. That is not required. But the question about salaries, and you should be giving us the most accurate budget information that you possibly can. I mean, that budget is going to become the point of negotiation. So it should be as accurate as you can get it. For anybody who's won an SBIR award before, there is a contract negotiation period. And if you're paying a janitor $700 an hour, somebody's going to negotiate with you on that. And there's going to be, it can get flagged later, but give us the most accurate budget information you have. It doesn't have to be this person. A lot of times it's it's engineer 2 at this many hours at this labor rate plus this overhead.
And I want to remind people that there are some tutorials online. SBIR.gov has some tutorials. I think we linked to them from, we had put together a little bit of a guide that Anne shared in the chat. There's also, I want to remind people that there are local resources in every state. So there are groups called PTACs, and there are a group called SBDCs, the Small Business Development Centers. And there are people at those organizations who help applicants go through these processes over and over and over again. So always feel free to research and find those local people to help you. Let's see. So the next question. What is the timeline for the Mentor Protege program within the context of a phase 1 or phase 2 SBIR? Is the expectation for that MPP to occur during both phases?
So the Mentor Protege program is separate from the SBIR program. It is not an intrinsic part. So, when you go to the NASA.gov and you get to the Mentor Protege program, you would be filling out those forms completely separately from what you do in the SBIR program.
Great.
There's no expectation in either phase 1 or phase 2 that you have a mentor protege relationship established, if that is a more direct answer. Great.
Okay, next question. What timeline is preferred for phase 2? Since it says 24 months, what would actually be that preferred timeline?
Yeah, I want to be clear. So this is SBIR wide, not just for Ignite, for any SBIR. The 24-month is the maximum period of performance. You are allowed to recommend or suggest a work plan that includes a period of performance that is shorter than 24 months. There's no preferred period of performance. Because I mean, for example, some firms are not going to be, the phase 2 is $850,000, right? And so if your firm is not capable of spending $850,000 ethically over the course of a year, then you shouldn't be trying to spend $850,000 in the course of a year. You should be doing it, phasing it as is appropriate to the work. However, if somebody can bring me a widget in 1 year and somebody else can bring me a widget in 2 years and they're identical, we prefer a faster pace of innovation, and that can be taken into account in the scoring of the work plan, just the pace of innovation. And we do in Ignite want, in the SBIR program, we get knocked a little bit for having a long period of time in between when we release a solicitation and when a phase 2 deliverable is there. But most of that period of time is the period of performance of phase 2, right? It's hard to shrink that timeline without shrinking the period of performance of the phase 2. So the answer is, fast is good. It's going to be good for your investors, right? Like we want it to be fast, but we want the work done right. So that's the first, that's the most important thing.
Thanks, Matt. All right, from Harrison. The solicitation does not explicitly ask for letters of support. Instead, it asks for letters of commitment for follow-on funding or product sales. Will we be penalized for including letters of support as well?
I will say that the letters of support and the letters of commitment, those sections applications should include, not must include. Okay, so first of all, there's, but the intent of those sections is, again, it's going to assessing the commercial viability of your commercial plan, right? So if somebody just has a vague statement like, at the end of phase 2, I will become venture capital funded, I would say, what does that mean, right? Like have you made any progress? Do you have a lead investor that's already on board? Are they waiting for you to get to a certain milestone? Show me some evidence that you're not going to be dependent on NASA funding. It's just the reason that section is called out the way it is because in the traditional solicitation they explicitly tell you not to send in letters of support or letters of intent or letters of commitment, because it will count against your page limit. And we won't consider them, is what it says in the traditional solicitation, more or less. And we do not count it against your page limit, and we want it, but we want it as part of the narrative of supporting your path to market for your commercialization plan. So, yeah, if you have a letter of support and you think it betters your case for commercialization plan, then you can include it.
And so just to follow up on what you were saying, Max, if you're a company that you don't think you're going to need venture funding after this, and you really think you can go direct to market, consider how you talk about your traction. Maybe you're even in the market. Maybe you already have commercial sales. So it's all about showing that traction one way or another, whether it's a customers, whether it's venture funding, whatever it might be. Those are the pieces that are important to us understanding whether or not you have a path forward. Would you agree with that?
I mean, our goal is to bring capability to market. It's not to make venture capital funds rich, right? If the venture capital fund is the method that you need in order to get your capability to market, then tell us that, right? But if you say, hey, I've got a reliable revenue stream and I'm going to use that revenue stream to bootstrap my innovation and get this next product to market, then you just need to tell that story. And that story is going to be told differently, but you just need to be able to tell it effectively.
Okay. All right. Next question. Can I go directly to phase 2 without going through phase 1?
Yeah, that's a great question. So some agencies can, some agencies can't. NASA can't. NASA does not have direct phase 2 authority. However, if you guys have been really reading the solicitation all the way to figuring out what happens in phase 2, we ask for your phase 2 proposal at the end of the 4-month period of your phase 1. And the reason we do that is because we want to award the phase 2 contract as quickly as possible with as little gap as we possibly can between the end of your phase 1 period of performance and the beginning of your phase 2. That is, I'm not going to say a workaround to not having direct phase 2 authority, because I would never work around anything that Congress has done, but it's a way to speed up the process.
Great. Let's see. Should I be specific? This is kind of a general question, and we get this a lot, but should a company be specific about a single use case, or should they try to include as like all possible use cases within a topic?
So I'm going to try to answer this without helping people write their proposals, which is what I'm not allowed to do. So your white paper has to include an explanation of why NASA should care, right? Or not why NASA should care, why it's relevant to the topic, okay? So in there, you need to tell us why you're a good match. In the deck, we're asking for your prove to me that you're going to be able to be viable on commercial sales, right? If you are looking at all of your use cases and you're like, I think that I'm going to, in the future, I think I'll sell 10% of my product into the emerging space markets and 90% of it to commercial trucking, then we need to know about that, right? Because we might sit there and look at it and say, there's no way you could sustain yourself only on, emerging market, emerging space sales. So it's impossible. Without that piece of evidence, we might say the business plan fails. So, so that would be my answer is if your market, if proving that you're going to deliver capability market requires this story about all of the other things you're going to be selling into, then absolutely, we need to know about your whole market, not just the segment of your market that's relevant to us.
Okay. So can you clarify the expected technology threshold for direct to phase 2? Any advice if we decide to do a direct to phase 2 as to the proposal content? So we've discussed not doing direct to phase 2 though. So yeah, just want to clarify that. In the proposal abstract, can you check more than one box? This is sort of what we just talked about, right? So in the proposal abstract, can you check more than one box for what the proposal addresses, right? Is that, I guess it gets a little more specific though.
If you're asking if you should check more than one box as to what topic it addresses, the answer is no. You have to choose a topic.
Okay. It gives an example, market stimulation and point solution.
Yeah. I believe you're allowed to check more than one box in there. You have to be careful. Read through the descriptions. To make sure that you're checking that box properly. I will say, like, that's data acquisition for us. That's not a scored parameter. So don't worry that it's gonna make or break your application. But I will say that accurate data does help us. For example, we suspect that we are going to get more point solutions submitted through the traditional SBIR solicitation and more market stimulation proposals submitted through Ignite. And we want to check to make sure that that expectation is reality. But it's, and if it's not, maybe we have to think about the topics we're choosing or something like that. But that's how we use that data. It's not something that's going to make or break your application.
Okay. One of my favorite topics, is there a funds matching opportunity here? Yeah.
I'm shocked at how many people don't know about NASA's matched funding opportunities. So I would say for me, the medium-term goal for Ignite is to have more private sector participation in NASA's matched funding programs. So there are 2 matched funding programs at NASA. One is called the Phase 2E. That is an option that is included in your phase 2 contract. And if you can get matching funds, it's actually a fairly simple process for us to just enact the option. We just turn the option on, and you get your matched funding with whoever your match funding has to just be non-SBIR dollars. So it can be DoD funding, it can be private investor funding. It can't be internal funding of yours. It has to be you can't say I've got $100,000 in the bank, I want to match it. You have to be bringing in new money from some source, but or it can be a NASA project, but that project cannot be SBIR. Or you can't go to a NASA SBIR or a DoD SBIR program, get their SBIR funds to match with our SBIR funds. It has to be SBIR funds matched with non-SBIR funds. And then and that's I want to say it's 350K of SBIR money matched to non-SBIR money. The CCRPP program is a match funding program that is in the last run of it, it was $2.5 million SBIR matched to a 2.5, matched 1-to-1 with an external source. And that to me is the medium-term home run of Ignite, is when the private sector is putting their funds into NASA's matched funding programs. The long-term one is actually getting the product to market, right? But in the midterm, the way we figure out if we're actually attacking something that has commercial relevance is to see that there's private sector interest in using these vehicles. So yes, there are match funding vehicles, and go after them aggressively now. Line up the investors, and that can be part of your phase 1 application, is to say, hey, look, I've got people on board. They're ready. They're excited about this. And if I get to the end of phase 2, they are going to fund.
Awesome. All right. Will 100% of the work have to be done by U.S. resources?
I believe that 100% of the work has to be done by U.S. resources unless you get a specific waiver from the program manager. I think that is what the solicitation says. And that is actually, if you guys have heard, SBIR has yet to be reauthorized for FY23, and that kind of thing is actually one of the things that's under the microscope of, like, people don't like it when U.S. taxpayer dollars go to fund other countries, right? So so I believe that does have to happen unless a very compelling case can be made that it's very important and it cannot happen in the United States. And even then, it's got to pass a pretty high hurdle to get approved.
Going back to the investment topic, what constitutes proof of private investment?
Proof of private investment. So, I mean, I guess it depends. So for the solicitation, when we're asking for proof of private investment, that's we're saying, hey, where's your letter of commitment? Where's your letter of intent? But that's not, if it actually comes down to, like, you want to use the matched funding vehicle, you want a CCRPP contract, then those are no longer sufficient. We actually have to have the commitments from I mean, at some point they have to transfer the money, right? I think we signed our end of the contract, but it doesn't actually go forward until I believe it's 30 days that the investor has to transfer the funds into the account. I don't know the details of it, but for the purpose of the application, we're looking for those letters of commitment, letters of support, letters of intent, any concrete thing you can point to for traction. Things get more strict when you actually need matched funds.
Okay. I understand the maximum is 2 submissions per firm. If both submissions are interesting to NASA, are 2 awards possible?
I don't believe there's anything in the solicitation that would prevent us from giving 2 awards to one firm. It would have to be pretty compelling, right? We only have 12 awards, to have 20% of the awards go to one firm, it would have to be, it would have to be there would have to be a good reason, but you know, there's nothing that would prevent that from happening as the solicitation. I believe the solicitation actually has a sentence in it, if I'm not mistaken, that says the intent is to not award more than one to any given firm, but it doesn't list it as a strict requirement.
Okay. The iCore quick form is a requirement. Is there any weight given to the choice of using iCore or not?
No, that is specifically for our, so people who win the award have access to the iCore program, the NSF's iCore program. It's an offering. We're giving it to you as an opportunity. If you either don't think it would be valuable, if you think it would be a distraction, or if you've already been through it or whatever, you just say, no, I'm not interested, and that's the end of it. But if you do think it's an opportunity, you fill it out, and then there's an iCore application that you would fill out during your phase 1 period of performance, and we would go from there. So it's an opportunity, not a requirement, and it will not be evaluated. It's not part of your scoring.
And this is not a question that just came out of the audience, but I've had this conversation with a lot of people. Can you, likewise, what about Taba? So Taba is something a lot of people see on the application. They maybe have never had experience with it before. Can you say a couple words about what that opportunity is, what it means for companies?
Yeah, so essentially, Taba came out of some congressional legislation, more or less. The SBIR program used to specifically not allow people to seek technical and business assistance. So it would be, so somebody might say, yeah, I got this SBIR, it was great, but I didn't have the money to patent it. So you know, or I got a phase 1, but you know, the phase 2 application is pretty involved, and I needed some help just putting together a more involved proposal, and I'm not allowed to use my SBIR money to go do that, right? It was explicitly forbidden, and so Congress essentially carved out the Taba allowance to allow people, if they want to get some amount of assistance with something that wasn't directly related to the technical deliverables. And so that is what Taba allows. And Taba is allowed in for Ignite winners as well.
And especially for companies that are just getting off the ground, I highly suggest you check it out. You kind of dive in and learn a little bit more about it, because it could be very useful. Another question. In your introduction to the topics, did you skip over hybrid electric, or is that still a valid topic?
Oh yeah, no, that's a valid topic. Did I skip it? I apologize. Ralph would kill me. So so hybrid electric is one that is a little strange compared to the others, because the hybrid electric aircraft, well, there's a program called SUSAN, and it's an acronym. I forgot what it stands for, but it's but basically NASA is working towards making a hybrid electric single aisle aircraft passenger jet a reality, right? The issue is that the timeline it takes to get something like that certified is very, very, very long. And so NASA is in the game of making long-term investments, and that's great. So they're doing that. But this topic was chosen because some percentage of the technology that would be valid to that long-term hybrid electric passenger aircraft is also relevant to large drones, the UAV market, the kind of more near-term things that people could see themselves accessing on a non-30-year time frame, like something that's actually that could entice an investor, quite frankly, to be paid back in a reasonable amount of time. And so they're really looking for technologies that are going to be relevant to both of those markets, right? That are both going to be UAV relevant, but also scalable to the large one. And the advantage is that the SUSAN is trying to have a 25% scale demonstrator, UAV demonstrator, where you could actually potentially get this technology beyond phase 2. You have a NASA project where it could land potentially on that SUSAN demonstrator and get flight qualified essentially on NASA's dime if it was picked up by a program. That's a little different because most of these things, it's after you're done with SBIR funding, the expectation is that you go try to attack the private sector market. But in this case, you could do that too. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But you also have a NASA project that is kind of actively pursuing a platform that could be useful to you. I mean, that is potentially true of some of the others too, right? I mean, we need solar arrays, right? LEO commercialization could potentially put in some money from a project. It's not that it can't be, but in that one, there's a more direct tie into where you could land beyond phase 2 within NASA.
Okay, and we're gonna take our last question now from Stephen Marshall. For matching fund programs, does the outside funding have to be contingent on getting the matching NASA funds, or can that investment have been made in advance of the match?
There is a rule on that. I don't know. So I believe it's like within 30 days. Don't quote me on that, but I think that if you've had an external investment within like 30 days of when you had your application accepted, then that match can be used towards the match. I don't know what, but like if you raised around 2 years ago and you said, hey, I want that to apply to the matching funds, that would not be allowed. So I will, Jen, if we can follow up on that one, I can run that by the person who runs the CCRPP and post or 2E program, and they can get me the exact numbers on that. But typically it is new money that's coming in, or money that has just recently been applied with kind of the expectation that this match funding was going to happen. Usually it's not like, yeah, I got this. Does this count? That's usually not the way it goes.
Great. So we'll send that question over to you. We'll get the answer and then we'll share that out. All right. That was a full hour. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us and wanted to learn more. I really hope that we answered some of your questions in a way that would help you through your processing and figure out if you can submit your application. It's a fantastic new opportunity. We've loved, reaching out and talking to people about this. So let us know. Again, Anne's in the audience here. Some of you are working with Lori Moncrief. We're here for you for the next couple of weeks. But again, if you're thinking of applying, get started now, because it's going to take you the next couple of weeks to get through it. All right, Max, any last words?
No, just thank you for the opportunity, Jen. And Established to come and talk to everybody. I'm glad to see there's so many people here and some enthusiasm behind it. I hope that everybody here sees a genuinely differentiated and new opportunity that doesn't look like kind of SBIR as usual. So
awesome. All right, everyone, have a great night.
Thank you.